Welcome to the IDP Plus Advice Show. Today we're going to discuss IDP news and notes, including depth chart analysis with all the week one depth charts coming out. And we're going to throw in some IDP bold takes along the way for the year. So with that, let's get started. All right, welcome everyone to Game Week. We have week one this week. We're recording here on Tuesday, September 2nd, so we're 2 days away from the Eagles and the Cowboys getting us started. By the way, it's going to be on NBC in case you weren't aware of that. All right, I am your host, Ricky Rodriguez. You can find me on X at RickyRod66. You can find Shawn Teague, who's joining me today, the IDP guru and savant. You can find him at Shawn8386. We're thrilled to be here with you today. We're going to be covering key IDP news and notes, including depth charts, and really focusing a lot on depth charts. And we're going to throw in some IDP bold takes along the way and maybe a few more at the end. Of course, if you missed any of our previous episodes, including the spectacular 2-hour debrief after the week 3 preseason takeaways that we recorded last Friday and was released Saturday morning, including the impact of roster cuts down to 53, the Micah Parsons trade. You can catch up on this IDP Plus YouTube channel. Micah Parsons is the graphic, by the way, to help you find it. And you can also find us on Spotify as well. And as many of you have been doing, and we'll do some shout outs here at the end of the show, leave your comments and questions on this YouTube IDP Plus channel, and we will respond to them. All right, Shawn, are you ready to get into things and talk about those linebackers?
Yeah, I'm ready for one last shot here before this thing kicks off.
All right, you got it, man. Well, look, as we're getting into linebackers, I do want to remind folks that our start-sit show, and I have to say that very slowly if you say it, you understand why, everybody. Our start-sit show begins this Sunday morning. You get me and Shawn and maybe another guest or so to answer your start-sit questions. We do IDP and we do offense. We start at 11 a.m. Eastern time, 10 a.m. Central time. We go for about an hour. Please don't come in 5 minutes before when we have a queue of 20 questions and get all upset because we don't get to your question, as a couple of people did last year. So it's an hour long. Get in early. Get your questions in early. All right, with linebackers, here we go. Bengals. We've talked about them quite a bit on several of our shows. Depth chart shows Demetrius Knight still starting over Oren Burks. No surprise there. We're not eager to put him into our lineup, right, Shawn?
No, we want to give him a week or two to get going here. Oren Burks, no, we're not starting him. Demetrius Knight, I'm not ready to start him either. But
sorry.
But it does look like he does have the early start here, so that's good news if you have Demetrius Knight.
And the other good news about it is that if you wait a couple weeks to start him, some of those kinks we saw in some of the early preseason games, particularly that week 2 game that we talked about on a previous show, hopefully, to Shawn's point, can work out those kinks. The Browns listed 3 linebackers on their depth chart starting: Schlesinger, Diabate, and Devin Bush. And I know you're proud of me for saying Diabate correctly.
You did really well. It took all year to get to this point.
Notice I skipped his first name, though. Now, with that, we're clear that Carson Schlesinger is the Mike. We're clear in putting him into our starting lineups. In the very deep leagues, very, very deep leagues, where you might need to play a Devin Bush or a Diabate, who do you think is the number 2 linebacker for the Browns as we start the season?
Boy, I don't feel really great about either one. But if I have to take that shot, I'm leaning towards Devin Bush right now, barring suspension or anything that may come of some off-season issues there.
And if he is suspended and Diabate ends up starting, lots of concern there that he missed most of the preseason here. And it's not, of course, the first injury reports won't come out till Wednesday, which is after we record this show. So I would, even if he's off the injury report, wouldn't feel good about putting him in, even if Bush ends up being suspended. Correct, Shawn?
Yeah, at least he knows the system, but with him missing a lot of time, being rusty, first couple of weeks here, we're treating these like extended preseason games. So things like this will have to get worked out a week or two.
All righty, moving to the Ravens. As expected, as we've been talking about, even though Trenton Simpson and Teddy Buchanan were both starting during the preseason while Roquan Smith rested, Trenton Simpson is shown as the starting linebacker next to Roquan Smith. On previous shows, we've talked about Trenton Smith and our feelings about him. Shawn, still linebacker 5-ish right now for Simpson?
Yeah, I'm still looking for the bounce back here this year. I know you are not, but I'm still holding out hope.
All righty. Once again, something to watch over these first couple of weeks. Now, these next few that we're going to talk about as we move into some of the AFC South teams, if you've been listening to us in previous episodes, you got a real jump on either your redraft or particularly those in Dynasty, as well. Got a real jump on picking up some folks off of waivers that could do you a lot of good. And we're going to start with Jacksonville, where on the depth chart, next to Foye Oluokun, it's a R situation with Devin Lloyd or Ventrell Miller. In fact, we had a question from, put into our YouTube channel asking in our show, asking about should they drop James Williams for Ventrell Miller. And we recommended that they pick up Ventrell Miller because it says, and as the depth chart came out, it said Devin Lloyd or Ventrell Miller. Who are you feeling good about out of those two right now, Shawn?
You got to feel better about Ventura Miller. He's the guy that's kind of gained the ground and really took over, whereas Devin Lloyd was the incumbent who's kind of losing his spot here. I assume Lloyd starts, but either there's going to be more rotation than we're going to want, or he's on a very short leash and they're going to pull him.
Yeah, that it feels like I'm with you that Lloyd will get the start just because of, I don't know, because he's been starting in the past, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But I think you see Ventrell Miller rotating in, and it just feels like they want Ventrell Miller to take over that role in place of Lloyd. And with Lloyd becoming a free agent at the end of this year, even more reason for them to want to try and work in Miller. So if you're out there, folks, and Ventrell Miller is on your waiver wires, probably possibly someone has a deep stash for your benches right now. Okay, now moving on to the Titans, as we've been talking about, Cedric Gray is leapfrog James Williams on the depth chart. Cedric Gray starting right next to Cody Barton. That was the exciting news. But then the Titans signed Kaiser White. So now we have this Cedric Gray with James Williams maybe pushing him a little bit potentially, and Kaiser White come into the mix. Shawn, Cedric Gray, we expect him to start week 1. When we get to about week 5 or 6, what do you think it looks like?
Oh, I just hope we're not in a weird rotation with Gray and James or James Williams this season, similar to the Landman and Troy Anderson from last year, where one's the thumper and the other one is for third downs and coverage situations. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. As we know, Cedric Gray is the tackling machine. James Williams converted safety. I think Kaiser White at this point is just depth. So barring an injury, I don't think he's going to overtake anybody. This team is young; it's rebuilding. They have no real need to put Kaiser White in. They need to see what they have with the young guys. I think they'll stick with him.
Interesting. Now, Kaiser White, while he was productive from a fantasy football perspective in IDP and finished as a linebacker too,
Mm-hmm.
if you go by the PFF grades, they were less than spectacular, I would say, and that's probably part of the reason he found himself, even though he was a starter all year long, he found himself sitting unsigned for all this time. Now, it could be that he was waiting for where there'd be an opportunity for him to start, sign a 1-year deal, reprove himself, and get back on the free agent market next year. My gut says Tennessee is actually going to surprise a few folks. The AFC South is not going to be that strong. And as the year progresses, there's a probability that Kaiser White, they're going to go with the veteran here. Not someone I'm looking to pick up right now, not someone I'm looking to stash, but just keep an eye out for the noise. And of course, during the season, we'll have information that we're sharing with you in terms of some of our takes on these folks. And so don't jump too quickly into the Kaiser White bandwagon. Let's see how this plays out. Cedric Gray is the person right now, is where Shawn and I are. Okay. Moving to the Colts, another one we told you about. Told you it's not going to be Cam McGrone. We told you it's going to be Joe Bacci, and that's what the depth chart says. Zaire Franklin and Joe Bacci is shown as the starters. As a side note, Chad Muma is who they just picked up off of waivers is already shown as the backup to Zaire Franklin, and McGrone is shown behind Bacci. Now, if Franklin gets hurt, I still feel like Bacci will move to that role just like he did in the preseason with the green dot. So that feels like it's positioning Bocce fairly well. Shawn, do you think Bocce can, jump to the top 24 before the end of the year? If you think he's in that Jermaine Pratt type of role with the that the Bengals, same defensive coordinator, what are your thoughts?
Hey, yeah, this team or this defense should be on the field quite a bit, also. So yeah, he's got every bit of the opportunity to be an LB2 top 24 finish here. One of the surprise ones we weren't counting on. Going back to our old shows where we did the top 24 repeat rates.
And we had Jalen Carley's in that we thought would jump into the top 24. Bocce is essentially jumping into that Carley's role, not expecting, and Carley's is on injured reserve. That's why he's not on the depth chart. But at this point in time, we're not expecting Carley's to jump back in. So right now, I'm feeling Bocce in terms of, bold takes kind of thing. Bocce can jump into that top 24, I think.
Yeah, I think so. With as much time as Carlys has missed, I mean, he missed pretty much the entire offseason, so he's the odd man out right now. Is my thinking. Bocce's got it. He's had it. He knows the system. I think he's the guy here.
Yeah, I was quite pleased in one of my dynasty leagues to put a fairly low bid on Bocce, and it's a league that has 2 copies of every player. So 2 players bid more than I bid on Bocce, but they bid on McGrone. So I got Bocce for nice and cheap. So I was thrilled to do that. So,
Nice.
so if you were listening to us, hopefully you were. Hopefully you got Bocce on your rosters and you got it for cheap as well. Now moving to the Texans. Aziz Al-Shahir and Henry Toto are going to be the 2 starting linebackers for the Texans according to their depth chart. The second team is Christian Harris and Jake Hansen, who played the Mike role last week in the last preseason game when the starters sat out. EJ Speed all the way down to third team, at least according to the depth chart. Shawn, a lot of people won some championships with EJ Speed last year, particularly dynasty teams. They're probably going to be reluctant to let him go. Should they be that reluctant to let him go? And should they let him go for folks like Cedric Gray, Joe Bacci, Ventrell Miller?
Oh yeah, because Speed, he's an old guy. So if you can get something like Gray or Bocce or anything that's going to have some value now and possibly the future, yeah, you got to make that switch. EJ Speed, he did good with the Colts, but we see what happened free agency. Nobody wanted him. He took not very much money to go to Houston, and he is buried on the depth chart. So he's old. He's not that good. If you still have him, get rid of him. Uh, I don't see him being anything.
Yeah, it's one of those things when someone does so well for you one year and then this cliff suddenly happens and it's just so hard to let them go and they're a roster clogger and because of but he led me to a championship or he got me to the finals. It is so hard to let some of those players go, but you got to take out that emotion and look at it from a fact-based perspective. So it's time to let EJ Speed go, pick up some of these other folks that we've been talking about, your Millers, your Grays, your Bocces, even a Teddy Buchanan in case Trenton Simpson slips up. All guys that I'd rather have on my roster than EJ Speed. All right, moving to the Broncos. Alex Singleton and Dre Greenlaw are your starting linebackers. So from a depth chart perspective, not much there. But one of the things that's been talked about, I believe, is their defensive coordinator and or Sean Payton. I can't remember which one. But they talked about the fact that with both of them coming back. It was Sean Payton. Both of them coming back from injuries, they were going to ease them back in. And so, and Sean Payton even talked about it'd be, a little bit silly or crazy to have them play 70 snaps in a typical game. That's about 65 defensive snaps on defense, to have them come back and play 70 snaps. With that kind of commentary, are you comfortable putting Singleton and Greenlaw into your starting lineup this week, Shawn, in week one? Are you going to wait week two, particularly if you have someone else on your bench?
I'm going to start Singleton this first week, but probably not Greenlaw. I feel like he still needs a little more time to heal up. Singleton got some practice in. He got to in the last preseason game. He got a few snaps in there as well. Also, they play the Tennessee Titans, who there's a very good chance they blow them out. So they could be up high enough to where Singleton comes in, gets a handful of tackles, goes to the bench. So there's another reason to be a little leery there. So if I am playing either one, it's Singleton.
Okay. I agree with you on that. I'd wait another week on Greenlaw if I have other options. Sometimes you don't have other options, but if you do, I would
Right.
definitely wait another week on Greenlaw. Um, the other thing of interest, I was looking at the lines earlier today. To your point, the Broncos and Titans, as well as the Cardinals against the Saints, have the two biggest lines in terms of spread. So if you believe that, now a lot of people are picking the Titans to potentially be competitive here in the AFC South, as I alluded to earlier. But week one, rookie quarterback,
Against
um,
that defense,
against that defense in Denver.
yeah, that's
Um, I, not the
going to be
week.
ugly. Yeah.
All right, moving on to the Chargers. We disparaged Junior Colson quite a bit in our last show. Once again, if you missed our last show, granted it was 2 hours long. Listen to it while you're exercising, while you're driving to and from work, whatever it might be, while you're going for a run or a walk, while you're cleaning the dishes, while you barbecue, whatever it is. Listen to that show. All kind of great information. Junior Colson got put on IR. Not and we said get rid of him now before he has no value, even though he's on IR. Troy Dye is the number 3 linebacker for the Chargers. Do you think Perryman and Troy Dye will have a rotation with Henley playing about 100% of the snaps? Do you think Perryman and Dye are rotation, or do you think Perryman's going to stay on the field? And if you don't think it's rotation of those two, do you still think Perryman will go off in passing situations, and the Chargers will bring in more defensive backs?
Yeah, I do think Perryman is the starter. And to your point, when they do need to go nickel and dime and whatnot, he will be the guy coming off. So I think that second linebacker role is already capped at 80% or so. And Perryman's going to get hurt eventually. It's going to happen. I'm picking up Troy Dye in some very deep leagues,
Very deep.
very deep, where I do have enough bench room to pick a kind of a handcuff. Uh, it's almost a certainty he's going to be on the field eventually. Troy Dye, and he did really well at the end of last year. He's the younger of the two. Perryman's getting hurt. It's coming. So deep leagues, if you got room on your bench, stash him. If you're shallow leagues, you're not looking at either one of these guys right now.
Exactly right. I am 100% aligned with you. And I do agree with you that I really think with some of the depth they have in the Chargers secondary, they re-signed Molden. So they have James, they have Molden, they
Gilman,
have Gilman, they have Dante Jackson, they have Tarheeb Still, who will be moving into the slot when they have 3 cornerbacks with Cam Hart. So for those of you that in cornerback require leagues, remember that name, Tarheeb Still, folks. That's a good name to have because he'll probably be in the field for 100% of the snaps, either outside or in 3 wide. He'll go into the slot. So that's our take on the Chargers, folks. Moving to the Raiders, we've talked about it ad nauseum, and it's nauseating because of the way some of this is playing out. On the depth chart, it showed Roberts, White, and Pratt, as it has all preseason. But Roberts has been coming off the field outside of obvious running downs. When the 3 have been on the field, Pratt's been playing on the edge, which has been super unproductive. We talked about it in the past, but I just want to briefly one more time, Shawn, of these 3, Roberts, White, Pratt, what's your order? And 2 is, are you willing to start the first one on your list, here in week one?
It's White, Pratt, Roberts for me. Well, now I'm just about to the point where I'll switch Roberts and Pratt, just because I do think Roberts will at least give me a bunch of tackles on the run game where Pratt's over on the edge, and I have no idea what he's going to be able to do. So his value is definitely tanked. A lot of people are off on Devin White. I get it, but when I can get him as a linebacker 6, green dot, he's on the field 100% of the times, at least he has a shot at getting me some production. That being said, I'm not starting any of them right away. Not this week. I got Devin White late enough to where he's going to be on my bench, and if something happens with a starter or if he can show consistent production, then I might put him in. But for now, he's one of the top guys on my bench.
And this is one of those folks when I'm watching all the games, and then for the show that we'll be doing next Tuesday night, a week from today, where we're discussing playing times and roles and things along those lines. We'll give you the scoop on where the Raiders just playing games in the preseason and they use Pratt completely different. I would be very surprised if that's the case. And so I'm aligned with Shawn's comments and thoughts in terms of going into week one, how we use these folks. Moving on to the Eagles. Next to Zach Bond, we had one of these either or situations, Jihad Campbell or Jeremiah Trotter. Shawn and I talked in the last show that we're really leaning towards Campbell starting, it's a surprise for us, but we think that's how it's going to play out. Shawn, Jihad Campbell, are you putting him into your lineups this week?
I am not actually putting him into my lineups this week, and that's because of this and or with Jeremiah Trotter. So
you think it's going to be a rotation? Is that what that means?
I do think that means we're going to see a little more rotation here, or they're going to do more 3 linebacker sets, which they haven't really shown much of that. So I really don't expect that. So I'm seeing the rotation. I don't even know if I have any Jihad Campbells on my roster because he was going higher than I was willing to draft him at. So if you got him, just hold off. He's a rookie also, and he's still making that transition. And he did miss some time with shoulder injury, and also, if I don't have to start him, I'm not starting him.
While I made the chicken cluck sounds to tease you, I am actually with you in terms of if I have other options, I would prefer to not play in week one and see how this plays out because I do think there is a little bit of a risk of a rotation here. And the rotation might even be Campbell plays 70%, Trotter plays 30%. But that would be enough to really hurt Campbell's viability as an IDP player for us. Now, that being said, some teams may have put Campbell or picked him so high, to your point, that they might not have any other options. So it's not someone you want to drop, folks, if you did pick him early, but it may require patience and you may have to do some bottom of depth chart maneuvering, like grab a Cedric Graham, like a Joe Bacci and drop somebody else, like maybe a safety or cornerback or something, and plug that person into your lineup until we have a little bit more clarity on Campbell and will he play 100% of the snaps. The other thing about the Eagles is that I saw a couple of different reports about how good Nakobe Dean looks working out on the side. And one person speculated that after the first 4 weeks are done, that Nakobe Dean might be ready to go. It was one person, and he wasn't a doctor. Another thing to keep in mind, we might need to grab Nakobe Dean a little bit earlier than we talked about. We told everybody to watch him from a stash perspective. And as the year progressed, then we'll grab him and not take a bench spot right now. But let's keep an eye on those Nakobe Dean reports. And that could, by the way, as a side note, could really put a kink in this whole Campbell Trotter Nakobe Dean mess.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Moving to the Giants, and we talked quite a bit about them last week, and including Dan Duggan of The Athletic commenting about he's not convinced Bobby Okereke is going to have 100% snap share. The depth chart came out, showed Okereke and McFadden as the starters. It showed Darius Muasau as a backup. Shawn, are you convinced, based on what we saw in preseason week 2, and also tied into what the athletic beat writer said, are we convinced that Okereke is truly going to play 100% of the snaps?
No, uh, I don't believe any of that coach stuff about they were just trying to give him a specific amount of snaps. When he's been in the league as long as he has, he doesn't need those snaps. So, a little bit of a bold take here. I don't see Bobby Okereke finishing this season on the Giants roster.
There you go, folks. Bold take. Bobby Okereke will have a different uniform on before the end of the 2025 season. All right. Um, I don't disagree with you. As a side note. All righty. The Cowboys we talked about last week. It's Sanborn and Murray as the two primaries. The third linebacker is a Lufau or Damone Clark. We got a great question though, and this the reason I want to talk about the Cowboys though. Question was, who do we think when Overshown is activated from injury, will he replace Sanborn or Murray? I gave my answer as being Murray would be replaced by Overshown. Do you agree with that? That it'll be Sanborn and Overshown when he comes back.
Yeah, I think so. Overshown was next to Kendricks. Kendricks was the green dot, the main guy there, and that's been Sanborn's role this entire offseason, this preseason, and going into week one. I think he keeps that, and that it would be Murray that would lose at least some playing time. I imagine this will be a slow work getting him in, not just throw him right in. It's not like they're going to be in playoff contention now, so there's no need to rush him.
You're saying that Micah Parsons trade didn't help the Cowboys out this year?
Another bold take here. Week 4, Micah Parsons ties Derek Thomas 7 sacks in a game.
In one game.
In one game. Against Dallas. I think it's in Dallas. I don't really know that.
I can't remember off the top of my head. It is week 4. That much I do remember. So, all right. So we're taking the over on the sack number for Micah Parsons in week 4.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Moving to the Packers here. Isaiah McDuffie still listed as linebacker number 3 with Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper, the starters. And by the way, Edgerrin Cooper is going to finish second from a linebacker's fantasy points perspective this year. So that's one of my bold takes here. Edgerrin Cooper will finish number 2 from a linebacker perspective. All righty. Tyron Hopper, by the way, is a name in dynasty leagues to keep in mind. He's been getting a lot of kudos. So a lot of during the preseason, a lot of people were surprised that the Packers drafted him as early as they did a couple years ago. And then as things were happening, people were like, "We were right that that they shouldn't have drafted him that high." Somehow this light bulb is going on, or the coaching has gone on, and he has really improved here during this preseason. But yet he is still the number 4 linebacker. So if some people have heard the similar reports that I have, just to make sure that's clear. And if Walker or Edgerrin Cooper got hurt, it's McDuffie that would move into one of those two roles. And then if both Walker and Cooper were somehow hurt, which hope that doesn't happen, then you would see Hopper on the field and McDuffie. So just a name for deep dynasty leagues. Quay Walker right now is a free agent. He hasn't signed an extension yet. So he could be someone in play and maybe someone to stash in deeper leagues, on dynasty leagues, is what I'm referring to here. So just a name to keep in mind. All right, moving on to the Bucks. As expected, no surprises. Servacia Dennis starting next to Levante David. Shawn, Servacia Dennis. Those are 2 different people. Levante David, Servacia Dennis. Sorry, I mixed them up there. Servacia Dennis, top 30 linebacker this year?
Top 30? Close to it. Maybe sneaks into that top 30. That spot next to Levante David has been productive in the past. He's made a lot of people look good playing next to him. And with his age, he may be slowing down a bit this year, too. So I do like Servacia Dennis this year. I've been picking him up super late, and he's sitting on the bench right now. But if he comes out of this first week or two pretty hot, then it's going to be hard to not plug him in.
Yeah, and one of my bold takes that we'll talk about later, Servasia Dennis and Levante David will both come up, one in a positive light and one in a not so positive light.
Oh, no.
I'll just leave it at that. All right. Panthers, Christian Roseboom, Trevin Wallace starting. No surprise there. Moving on to the 49ers, Dean Winters is clearly starting at linebacker. We've talked about it quite a bit. Talked about the fact that, well, in case you did miss the last show, how Nick Martin didn't even get in until the second half on defense. And Chaz Surratt, who actually played the whole first half ahead of him, got released. So, boy, that just doesn't sound good for Nick Martin at this point in time, folks. So, D Winters, I'm feeling a whole lot better right now in terms of how solidly he has that number two position, Shawn, over Nick Martin. Do you agree with that? I don't think we have anything to worry in the short term or possibly even the longer term if Winters performs.
No, I think it's his to run with it. And as far as being bold, he's a top 24 guy if the season pans out the way I think it will. He could sneak in there and really push for. I think by the end of the season, the gap between Warner and D Winters, as far as where they finish in linebacker rankings, are actually going to be a lot closer than everybody thinks. I think
That
Warner's
is
going to be. I think he's going to slide down a bit this year, and I think Winters is going to shoot way up.
that is quite the bold take. Very interesting. All right. Um, Last linebacker group I want to talk about the Cardinals, and just real briefly, Mac Wilson and Akeem Davis Gaither are listed as the starters as expected. But as a reminder for folks, we've talked about it quite a bit. Shawn, the second linebacker role for the Cardinals, which Akeem Davis Gaither has, not so productive.
No, it's in my eyes, it's not a spot I'm looking to draft on any of my teams. Shallow, deep, even deep leagues, I've steered away from it. It was not overly productive last year for me, so I've avoided that situation altogether.
And then on Mac Wilson, I do this calculation about combined tackles per snap. So it takes solo tackles, assisted tackles, and then total snaps that they played last year, and then I calculate that out. And Mac Wilson was at 0.098. Okay, so for perspective, folks like Zaire Franklin were 0.15, Roquan Smith 0.155. Logan, let's see, I'm sorry, one more I'll give you. Zach Bowen 0.161, Logan Wilson 0.140. The point of that is when Mac Wilson even plays and he's on the field, he's not exactly productive from a tackles perspective. Of course, we said the same thing about Kaiser White a little bit earlier, who was in that role, was just kind of a guy, but he still finishes a linebacker too. Just feels like Mac Wilson is even a step back from Kaiser White, Shawn. So
Yeah,
not feeling that Mac Wilson will finish like a linebacker two, similar like a Kaiser White did.
no, I could see him maybe cracking the low end of the threes, but it really bodes well for Buda Baker actually to put up big numbers again.
All right. So that wraps up our linebacker discussion, folks. You may have noticed I didn't talk about like the Bills or the Jets or the Dolphins. Didn't mention the Commanders. All those are the obvious starters. The Jets with Jamin Sherwood and Quincy Williams. The Bills with Tara Barnard and Milano. Wasn't nothing new to talk about there, so that's why we skipped some of those as FYI. But we got a lot of information on defensive backs to talk about now. So we're going to move into the defensive backs. And the Dolphins, even though Ifeatu Melifonwu started next to Minka Fitzpatrick last week, it looks like on the depth chart we have Ashton Davis over Melifonwu, Shawn.
Yeah, that was a big surprise. Big surprise for me. Did not see that coming. I thought it was Melifonwu's once he came back from injury. Uh, he
And
looked good.
Melifonwu did start in preseason week 3 next to Minka. Now
Yeah,
Ashton Davis has been injured since very early in training camp,
right.
and I haven't seen that he's practicing, Shawn. So
I really don't know what's going on here. I think
I'm not
this.
buying it. I think this is maybe a rotation thing to start, but I don't think I'm buying this Ashton Davis, and I don't think by week 3 Davis is starting on Melifonwu.
I wouldn't think so. I think Melifonwu in the past has been more of a box slot guy, and that's what they want to do with Fitzpatrick. So maybe they think Ashton Davis is better deep than Melifonwu, but I'm with you. I think this is rotation. Um, I still took some shots on Melifonwu in best ball, but of all these guys, it's Fitzpatrick and nobody really. It's nobody's worth grabbing outside of Fitzpatrick right now on this team.
Right. And once again, on our weekly shows, as we get into the season, folks, and we're looking at playing time and snap count and alignments and things along those lines, you want to join for those shows. Tons of terrific feedback out of those shows last year, folks. So you want to check them out. And that's one of the ones we'll be watching is this Davis versus Melifonwu. Another one we'll be watching is with the Bills, where Cole Bishop is listed as the starter over DeMar Hamlin. We were nervous because week 2, Bishop looked really bad in preseason. Week 3, he played with a lot of the non-starters, but he's listed as the starter. Shawn, as we get into week 1, you feeling good about putting Bishop into the starting lineup?
Do not feel the greatest about starting him. I have picked him up in a lot of leagues because I got him late, but he's a hold for me right now, redraft, and we'll see how this first week or two goes. If he can come out and not do anything too reckless and get himself pulled for Hamlin, then I might start him going forward. But I'm going to have to see it first.
Yeah, so I actually picked up Xavier Watts in one of my leagues, and I plan
Very
to
nice.
start Xavier Watts, and we'll talk about the Falcons here in a little bit, over Bishop this week because Watts to me is a clear starter, whereas Bishop is a little bit questionable, and I want to see how this
Sure.
plays out. If Bishop makes a bad play, I just have this fear that McDermott yanks him and puts Hamlin in. So, folks, be cautious about starting Bishop here in week 1. The Jets list Tony Adams and Andre Cisco as their safeties. No surprise there, but no one we're anxious to put into our lineup, Shawn?
I'm not. I'm not. These guys feel like bottom of the barrel. Cisco has never produced anything great. He's been a decent waiver wire ad for a bye week or something here and there, but I don't trust either one of these guys right now.
Yeah, now Tony Adams has had a couple of weeks where he has started, and when they played him a lot in the box,
Yeah.
previous regime, of course, and he had a couple of really good productive IDP weeks. But then maybe what was productive for IDP wasn't great for real football, for lack of a better term, and he ended up on the bench. And I
Right.
remember this so well because I got burned. Um, so anyway, Adams is someone to watch right now, but we're not putting him into our lineups. The Patriots are next, and their depth chart, no surprise. We've been talking about what's been happening with Kyle Duggar, and they listed Craig Woodson, and they specifically listed Craig Woodson as a strong safety and Jalen Hawkins as a free safety. Now, in looking at PFF and some of the alignment snaps, Jalen Hawkins played. I should have done the calculation, but I just remember off my head like it was like 80% of his snaps were deep or something like that. Whereas Woodson was around 57% deep.
57 is what I was thinking as well. I think you're dead
Yeah.
on.
So neither one of those guys are getting me too excited right now with that kind of alignment. I'm watching Woodson, but I'm not eager to play him, and I'm not necessarily eager to pick him up depending on what I have to drop. Shawn?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. But all these guys should be on the bench. Keep an eye on them. If it turns out Woodson's getting some production, then go for it. But I don't see it anytime soon.
All right, Shawn, we told everybody it's time to let go of EJ Speed. Are we? And you've been very clear. One of your bold takes that you've mentioned a couple of times prior to this show is that Kyle Duggar wouldn't finish in the top 24. Are you that confident that we can even cut bait on Kyle Duggar completely, just like we
Yeah,
did with EJ Speed?
I would. Yeah, defensive backs for as many as there are out there, you can drop in for somebody else. And Xavier Watts, for example, anybody playing in the slot, more or less. Anybody that's playing, because right now Kyle Duggar is not playing.
Exactly. So don't let the name recognition fool you from what's the reality of what's really happening. And a lot of times that we talk about how teams tell us a lot by not even telling us anything, just by watching what they're doing. Sometimes it's based on the amount of dollars that they sign someone to in a contract. which a year ago that was great for Duggar, but not so much this year. Right. All right. Moving to the Steelers and Ravens. Jalen Ramsey and Marlon Humphrey are both listed as starting nickel cornerbacks. My bold take, talked about it last week. Jalen Ramsey, assuming he finishes healthy, finishes as a top 6 cornerback this year, a return to relevance for Jalen Ramsey. Marlon Humphrey, particularly with now the additional cornerbacks they have with Jair Alexander, Nate Wiggins, Chidobe Awuzie, TJ Tampa, they have enough depth that Marlon Humphrey can really stay in that slot, even if there's injuries. I see him finishing as a top 12 cornerback as well. Shawn?
Yeah, I don't really hate either one of those takes. Humphrey's been very productive in the past. I know everybody hung on to the year he had so many forced fumbles and kind of overdrafted him for a long time now. And then last year, I think he had 5 or 6 interceptions. So he can do it all. So I do like him. And Ramsey, he's had such a big name for so long. I hardly ever get a share of him. So, but if he does what we think he's going to in that slot role, and with his physicality, yeah, he could be. I don't know if I want to go top 6 or whatever, but he's definitely in line for top 12.
Right. And if you're wondering why I have him as top 6, if you listen to our last show, you can speed up to where we talked about the defensive backs and Steelers, and you'll hear the logic for why I feel so good about Jalen Ramsey. Now, if you're looking for someone to potentially drop, particularly in dynasty leagues, and someone who's done really well for you for a number of years, let's go to the Colts and Kenny Moore. So the Colts have Travarius Ward finally healthy and active and back. They signed Xavier Howard. And on their depth chart, they showed those two starting at cornerback, and they also showed Kenny Moore starting at cornerback. Now, Howard might be eased in to start, but over time, I could see Ward and Howard being those two outside guys and Moore not playing 100% of the snaps anymore, either being with a combination outside or in the slot, and that really having an impact to Moore. Kind of a little bit of a bold take there that I see Moore finally falling out of the top 12 after all these years of being on a points per game basis in the top 12. He's also turning 30 this year. Now, I'm not saying Ward and Howard necessarily young either, but Moore falling out of the top 12 and possibly even the top 24. Shawn, how you feeling about that?
I'm right there with you. I actually had that down in my notes as well, that Kenny Moore would fall off a cliff basically with his production this year. Not just his age, but the difference in schemes and everything else. Some of the pieces they put around him. Uh, yeah, he's not going to give us the numbers we got 5 years ago. I'm with you.
And then on top of that, Jalen Jones, who was one of those cornerbacks that we love, who was so bad that
Yeah.
teams picked on him, but there was no one good enough to replace him. He is now the number 4 cornerback in Indianapolis. He's listed behind Howard on their depth chart. So if you had Jalen Jones from last year, and as a reminder, the repeat rate for cornerbacks, top 24 year over year, is extremely low. That's one of the things that made Kenny Moore so great. But his is coming to an end, and don't expect Jalen Jones to repeat. So if you have him on your rosters, folks, someone you can cut bait on. Moving to the Jaguars in the safety position first, and then we'll talk about cornerbacks. There's this guy named Travis Hunter that people might be interested in. But at the safety spot, as we speculated in our last show, Andrew Wingard is listed as the starting safety next to Eric Murray. Shawn, not someone we're necessarily going after, but a nice bye week fill-in with Wingard.
That's by week fill in. I'm in a league where we can start 4 safeties, and it's 12-team league. So I looked at him pretty hard at the end of that one, and somebody else pulled the trigger before I did. So he definitely has some value. Keep an eye on him, but more than likely he's going to stay on in the waiver wire. But if this Lloyd Miller becomes such an issue that Wingard's up there making all the tackles, then it's time to pick him up. But something to keep an eye on.
All right. And then now at the cornerback position, the Jags only listed 2 starting cornerbacks, Jordan Lewis, who they signed from the Cowboys, and Tyson Campbell. Now, Lewis is primarily a slot player. Yeah. So, Jerry and Jones is expected to be the outside starter along with Tyson Campbell. And I think because of the money they paid Lewis, and he's an older veteran. He's around 30. That's why they kind of put it on the depth chart that way.
Hmm.
So you have Jerry and Jones, you have Tyson Campbell, and then you have Jordan Lewis in the slot. Where does that leave Travis Hunter? Only for dime packages, basically?
On the bench where the rest of the offense is because he's an offensive guy. I don't even know if they wouldn't bring in more safeties before they bring in Hunter. I think it's going to be situational. Depending on how the game is playing out, maybe it's a close game. They need a turnover. Maybe he's out there then. Uh, Realistically, if they try to play him both sides of the ball, it's going to shorten his career substantially. So
Yeah.
I think they'll be smart and keep him mostly on offense. Maybe every once in a while he'll be deep, but yeah.
I think dime package in certain key situations, I think he's in. But other than that, I don't think we're going to see him very much on defense. He'll play just enough to be able to call himself a two-way.
Yeah.
But the reality is he's going to be mostly an offensive player. That's how I'm feeling right now.
And if we see Tyson Campbell get injured like we've seen in the past several years, Monteric Brown or somebody else is going to come in, not Travis Hunter, to jump in and take one of those spots. So they're going to look elsewhere over Travis Hunter. He's not going to get an injury and then find his way into it.
That's a great call out as well, Shawn. Absolutely agree with that call out. Okay, moving to the Texans, some good news. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson Jr., or the second, or whatever it is expected to play in Week 1 per Coach Ryan. I have Gardner Johnson as a number 2 safety this year, falling into the top 24. Any argument with that, Shawn?
If he's healthy. He has had trouble staying healthy, but he is productive when he's on the field, whether that be fumbles, interceptions, or tackles, whatever. Kalen Bullock's not a tackler, so it'd be Gardner Johnson up there in the box in the slot next to Petrie, more or less. So yeah, there's a lot of mouths to feed on this defense, though. So that does worry me a little bit that he's going to be able to get the production he needs.
The one thing that I like, and I do agree with you because of the injuries. In terms of, so I'll change my statement to in terms of fantasy points per game that would definitely finish in the top 24. How's that?
There you go.
But they do use him more as a box, and they use Kalen Bullock as a deeper safety. So that lends opportunities for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson that he wasn't getting with the Eagles in that 2 deep system that Fangio had.
Sure.
So I do like him there. Speaking of Eagles, let's jump there for a second, where Sidney Brown or Andrew Makuba, the rookie out of Texas, is listed next to Reed Blankenship. Who's going to win this job, and how long will it take?
I'm going to say Sidney Brown starts with it, and it's going to take maybe a month and a half before Makuba fully takes over. I do think it is going to take some time just because of the way the system is and probably the reluctancy to put Makuba in there by himself and not in a rotation. I think the fact that it says or, that they're really having a hard time trusting either one of these guys, and the fact they brought Marcus Epps back as kind of a depth fill-in makes me think they're a little nervous about handing it over to the rookie just yet, and they're definitely not sold on Sidney Brown.
I'm with you. And there's a chance, even if they're unhappy with those guys, that even Cooper DeJean gets, as we've talked about in previous shows, that DeJean moves into that safety role and then maybe moves down to the slot here in 3 wide and so forth. So definitely something to watch here. Not feeling great about either one of these two. Definitely not putting either one in our starting lineups here in Week 1.
Right.
Now let's talk about the Broncos, where big surprise, Jaquan McMillan, to his credit, has held off Jahdae Barron, the number 1 draft pick, number 20 overall with the Denver Broncos, and McMillan is showing up as a starter on the Broncos. I was one that in one league I cut ties with McMillan early in the offseason because I felt that good about Barron, but McMillan has stepped up. Are you keeping Barron stashed on your bench? Are you just going to, with all the cornerbacks out there, are you leaving them on the waiver wire? And are you picking up McMillan? So a couple of different questions there, Shawn.
I'm probably staying away from both of them, just because there, like I say, there are so many other options. I'm looking for a better matchup, I guess, with somebody that's definitely going to be the full time. Just because McMillan's starting doesn't mean he's going to be in there the entire game. Could be rotation, could just be veteran service to give him the opening start, and then Barron takes over. I don't know. This is a very dangerous secondary. Um,
Yeah, and I didn't talk about it in the last show, but I did see Barron playing with the backups in the third preseason game.
well, that's interesting. That could have just been to get more reps to get him ready. Maybe they really think he's not ready yet. So uh, I'm not starting either one this week. But if McMillan gets the full time slot role, I guess the nickel role, then it's worth a look week 2.
Yeah, and McMillan has shown that he can pay off in that role. Once again, depending on the teams they're playing and how much it calls for a third cornerback to be on the field.
Right.
The Chiefs, as we talked about last week in quite a bit of detail, Cook and Connor shown as starting safeties, Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson shown as the starting cornerbacks, Jaden Hicks shown as a backup on the depth chart. As much as we both love Jaden Hicks, as much as people are singing his praises that maybe aren't paying enough attention to the details about how much he's on the field, we can't trust Jaden Hicks right now, can we, Shawn?
No, he's a fun prospect in best ball, but yeah, redraft dynasty, you got to either put him on the bench or on the waiver wire.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. All righty, moving to the Packers now. Keyshawn Nixon and Nate Hobbs were shown as the starting cornerbacks, not Carrington Valentine. Evan Williams was shown as a starting safety along with Xavier McKinney. Williams was shown over Javon Bullard. Unfortunately, they didn't list a nickel cornerback, which is what we really want to know for the Packers.
Some teams do, some of them don't. This was one team that didn't break that down for us.
Exactly right. So we're going to have to watch week 1. But there was some good news for folks in return only league, not return only leagues that reward you for return yardage, and that Keyshawn Nixon is still listed as the number 1 kick returner for the Packers. So the one thing that's interesting is that with the new kickoff rules, that means that there'll be more returns and more return yards. So even if Nixon is playing on the outside in these return yardage leagues, he could still give you the value to make him a number 1 cornerback. Right, Shawn?
Yeah, he definitely could. That's another thing we were a little uncertain about. Would he get those return yards or not? So yeah, if you get those points, he's back down there where we wanted him.
All righty. So then, without knowing who the nickel cornerback is going to be, I'm going to give you 3 names. Who's going to be the nickel cornerback, Shawn? Is it going to be Nixon? Is it going to be Hobbs? Or is it going to be Javon Bullard? Who are you placing your bet with if you're in Vegas right now?
Bullard.
Bullard. And is that because Hobbs, even though he's listed as starting cornerback, has missed a lot of time with injury?
That's part of it. Bullard was there last year in that role as well. And I think another year in the system, I think he's going to kind of earn it. Now, they may switch around later on us, but I think you got to go with Bullard. He knows the system. Hobbs coming over. Hobbs was injured last year, too. So he's looking a little shaky as a player altogether right now.
And that's a great point that Hobbs is new to the Packers system where all these other guys are back and returning. And so focusing him on one position first, maybe the outside, and then maybe over time potentially move him into the slot, particularly since he's had injuries and he's missed so much time as well. So great call out. Javon Bullard makes a lot of sense, but not someone we're starting either way, correct?
Right. Yeah, I'm staying away from him.
All right. Moving on to the Vikings, where not a whole lot of new information related to Harrison Smith in this personal situation that they'll be checking on a week-to-week basis. Not clear if he's even going to play here in week 1. They show the way the Vikings depth chart was, they showed Cashman and Pace as starting linebackers. They showed Smith and Metellus
Metellus.
as
Yeah.
starting safeties, and they showed Theo Jackson as a backup. But we've seen under this Brian Flores defense that second linebacker spot, that Ivan Pace is listed as the starter, does not get that much playing time. So what do we want to let people know, Shawn? If they're seeing that depth chart, they see Ivan Pace starting and they're ready to stick him into their lineup in week one. What are we going to tell them not to do, Shawn?
Yeah, do not start Ivan Pace. Do not. It's
Why is that,
it's a,
Shawn?
it's fool's gold. Don't do it. He's not going to give us the production. It's Josh Metellus is the linebacker too. Blake Cashman is the only linebacker worth starting on that team.
Yeah. So if Cashman gets hurt, which he has tended to miss 3 or 4 games every year, and
Yep.
Pace is starting, you can put him in. But that second Vikings linebacker role under Brian Flores just does not get the snap count needed. As efficient as Pace is from a tackling perspective, on a tackle per snap basis, he's one of the top linebackers. He
Yeah.
just does not get enough snaps. So don't fall for the trap. Now, caveat: do we think it changes if Harrison Smith is out? There's no more Cam Bynum. There's Metellus and Theo Jackson. Do you think it's Jay Ward as a third safety, or do you think they now play Pace more if Harrison Smith does not play? Throw you a curveball there, Mr. Teague.
That's pretty interesting. I need Harrison Smith to bail me out. Is what it sounds like. If he is out, then they may have to have Metellus play more of a traditional safety role, or I assume Theo Jackson would be deep anyway. So maybe Pace gets a little more playing time. Uh, Maybe they bring Dallas Turner on and move Van Ginkel over instead of Pace as well. So that's something else to watch. They did that some in Miami. Van Ginkel
and
would slide into a traditional linebacker role and bring on somebody like Dallas Turner.
Yeah, and Van Ginkel did play some box snaps last year as well as the year progressed and all. So I think that might be the answer more than Pace getting more playing time. And I think Metellus keeps his traditional role, and Theo Jackson is in that Bynum role now. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, folks. So it's something we'll be watching. The Bears, Kyler Gordon is shown as the starting nickel cornerback. They also are cross training him at other positions, although he did have an injury during the preseason, which limited that a little bit. Shawn, do you know who is my pick for the number one cornerback this year from a bold take perspective? I just gave a serious hint by mentioning his name.
Tyreek Stevenson.
No, that would be.
Kyler
Although
Gordon.
Kyler Gordon is the man, and as a side note, Tariq Stevenson is listed as the starter across from Johnson, which he was in a battle for.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, Kyler Gordon, and the reason is if you look at last year in that Saints defense under Dennis Allen, that slot cornerback. First, it was Alontae Taylor, number one cornerback, until injuries forced him to the outside, and then they put Ugo Amadi into that role. And Ugo Amadi isn't exactly a stud; he's a solid player, but then he was in the top 5 from a cornerback perspective. That role that Dennis Allen deploys and how he uses in blitzing and tackles for losses and things along those lines, I just think it's going to be invaluable here. Kyler Gordon is my bold pick as the number one cornerback this year.
I like that.
I thought you would. Sometimes you say I don't hate that, and sometimes you say I like that. I like it a lot more when you say I like that. You
I
like
never know which one I'm going to say.
Oh, shoots. All right, so that's the Bears. Move to the Panthers. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Nick Scott is number one on the depth chart along with Trevor Morey as the 2 starting safeties. Um, Lathan Ransom is notated behind Nick Scott. Damani Richardson is behind Morey. The reason I call that out is I'm a little bit surprised because Ransom is more of a box safety. Nick Scott, a lot of his snaps I looked on PFF were deep. Morey is the one who, when they do have someone playing close to the box, I think it'll be Morey. So Richardson is behind Morey on the depth chart, Ransom behind Nick Scott. I would have thought it might have been flipped, to be honest with you, Shawn.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the preseason, unofficial depth charts had it flipped for the longest time.
Yeah. So when Nick Scott loses the starting job,
Mm-hmm.
notice I didn't say if, I said when. Who's going to be in there? Richardson or Ransom?
Ransom.
Richardson.
Richardson. Think so?
Yeah,
I,
until they fall out of the playoff race. I
that's
think they will.
we're both talking about week 4, right?
That's a fair point. All right, fair enough. So this one will be interesting to see how it plays out. Even if it happens at week 4, I do see Richardson going in, but I think as we get to later in the year, they're going to go to the rookie as opposed to the undrafted free agent that Richardson is, unless Richardson plays lights out. But if he played that lights out, they don't
He'd
re-sign
already
Nick
have
Scott.
it. Yeah.
They certainly don't have him in the starting lineup. So I don't think this bodes very well for Richardson, actually. So Ransom is probably the one we would want to keep an eye on, but neither one of those guys are on our rosters right now, Shawn.
Right. Right. They're on the wire where they belong.
Okay. And then Chow, and I don't know if it's Cho or Chow Smith Wade. He's expected to start at the nickel cornerback. Just as a side note, another one of these names to watch from a nickel cornerback perspective in cornerback required leagues. Moving to the Falcons, we talked about Xavier Watts earlier in the show, and we talked about in our last show as well, how Coach Raheem Morris has named him as the starter at safety. They actually released Jordan Fuller, then re-signed him, so we do want to keep an eye on that. Billy Bowman starting in the nickel. Unfortunately, Shawn, as a reminder, we talked about in our last show, but why don't you tell folks about why Bowman as a safety playing cornerback isn't as good as if he was a cornerback playing listed as a cornerback but playing safety.
Yeah, when you have corner designation and you're playing safety, you're getting all those tackles like a normal safety. It's a big boost. It's a bit of a cheat code. But this is the opposite. This is somebody with safety eligibility playing as a corner. So the production is the same, but because of the position, he's going to drop. He's not going to
And
be
he
on the
might
field
not
all
have
the
as
time.
many snaps either as well.
Right, right. He's going to be down in the 70-75% stat range. So less playing time, less opportunities for tackles. It hurts. I will say we did a draft on ESPN just 2 days ago. He does have corner designation there. So that's already been corrected on that
All
one.
right. So another thing to always check is position eligibility, folks. And some, MFL has done a couple of changes recently. RSO has done some changes. Position eligibility changes. Those cheat codes can go away in some cases. So keep an eye out for that, folks. Don't put someone in there that maybe doesn't give you the benefit that you thought. Earlier in the show, Shawn, I talked about Xavier Watson, how I'm going to start him over Cole Bishop in one of my leagues. In fact, it's the Kings Classics League that I'm going to do that in.
Nice.
Yeah. So, do you feel good about Xavier Watts enough to start him this week?
Absolutely. Yeah, we liked him coming out of college. We talked about that a long time ago. Just in the safety ranks as somebody to watch, and to see him already have that starting spot, that's a green light for me to go ahead and start him.
All right. I'm right there with you. I love him in that role. I think he's going to be very productive. Alante Taylor will be the nickel for the Saints. Brandon Staley, he's used Derwin James in that type of role. When he did it, Derwin James was uber effective, and James was listed as safety. Taylor's listed at a cornerback. I thought earlier in the offseason that Taylor was going to end up on the outside. As of right now, all indications are he's in the slot, playing that nickel type of role. Very valuable role. If he plays that role all year, definitely can finish top 12 again.
Absolutely.
On the Bucs side of things, Antoine Winfield and Tyke Smith, the former Georgia uh, former Georgia Bulldog, sorry, their name just completely slipped my mind, are the start. Those are the two starting safeties for the Bucs, as we talked about. Love Smith and love Winfield this year. Jacob Parrish will be the starting nickel cornerback, even though they only listed two cornerbacks on their depth chart. Everything is showing, including some of the playing time in the preseason, Jacob Parrish starting at cornerback. And I'll come back and talk to him about him a little bit later. Wrapping up the defensive backs real quick. Jair Brown surprisingly shown as the starter over Marquise Siegel. Of course, Malik Mustafa will be back at some point during the season. We're not playing Jair Brown, are we, Shawn?
I'm not. I'm not. He feels like he's on shaky ground. He could be pulled at any time, and Siegel could take over. That's how it feels.
Upton Stout, the rookie, is going to be starting in the nickel cornerback position. Diamador Lenore, who the past couple of years has finished as a top 24 cornerback, don't see him finishing in the top 24 this year. Don't see him moving into that nickel role this year as much. And I just think this is the year he'll fall out. Agree, Shawn?
Yeah, losing that nickel spot where he was getting more tackles, more opportunities. Plus, he's banged up. So, looking back in previous years, he was just inside that top 24 anyway. He was never on that high end. So, he was always in like the 22, 24 range. So, yeah, it could easily pull him out of that.
Okay. Another cornerback to keep an eye on, Garrett Williams of the Cardinals, who is expected to start on the outside and move into the slot when they go to three cornerbacks. Another cornerback to keep an eye on in cornerback leagues. And lastly, Seahawks, Nick Imanwori, who a lot of people drafted really high, shown as second string from a Seahawks safety perspective. Shawn, can we put him into our lineups? We love him for the long term. We love him for dynasty, but how are we feeling week one right now on him?
No, you can't start him without knowing for sure what his role is. Right now, he has a bit of an undefined role, and he's not getting a full snap share. So it's super risky to do it. If you believe in him that much, go ahead, but I would not.
I agree with you there. Unless there's some sort of injury, I just don't see it happening at this point in time. Okay, he's just not going to get enough snap count. All right, moving to the defensive line. The Dolphins showed Bradley Chubb, Chop Robinson, Jalen Phillips, all listed as first-team players. They put an interesting different designation on Phillips, but I just can't see all three of these guys starting per se. And it just feels like they're going to be those three are going to be rotating, and maybe on obvious long third down situations, all three are on the field. Shawn, do you want any of these three guys right now?
Only in best ball. I've taken shots on all three of them actually in best ball, but as far as redrafts, I'm not comfortable enough starting any of them. I may have one or two on my bench, but until I know what this role is for sure, they're sitting there.
All right. We talked about the Patriots defensive line quite a bit last week, and on the depth chart, it played out that way. Harold Landry and K'Lavon Chaisson as the starters. Keon White was second team behind Chaisson, and Anthony Jennings was all the way down to third team. So if you kept Anthony Jennings because of that tackle upside he gave you at the edge position last year, I think you can cut his ass.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. Keon White, very disappointing. Keon White's comments were also disappointing that, well, I'm just, as long as I'm getting a paycheck and I'm going to keep on working hard. But, it was very disappointing. It didn't sound like someone who has that kind of, Myles Garrett or Nick Bosa type of mentality.
Yeah.
So Landry and Chaisson are your starters. Moving on to the Giants, Abdul Carter is listed second team behind Burns and Thibodeau, similar to the Dolphins situation. I think I'm okay playing Burns, but I'm not in on Thibodeau and Carter. Your thoughts, Shawn?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Burns is the only guy I'm taking.
Right. Now, on our last show, when we talked about the Micah Parsons trade, I talked about how Jeff Hafley, defensive coordinator, would prefer to play. And there was a couple of quotes that I grabbed here. That came out since our last show, which was defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley is from the Pete Carroll cover three system and is reluctant to blitz to create pressure. To Hafley's credit, he is much more diverse schematically than other coaches from that tree, but he wants to be able to get to the quarterback with the front four. Okay. So even with that, my bold prediction of Edgerrin Cooper still stands for the record, folks. So if you saw that same quote, and the fact that they want to try and rush four and keep seven deep, I still think that Hafley will be less rigid than Pete Carroll was, and you'll see enough blitzing and spying by Cooper and things along those lines that he'll still be the number 2 linebacker in fantasy points this year. Shawn?
Yeah, I like that. We talked about it last week. How we thought, or how I thought Cooper would still be able to get some sacks. Sounds like he is going to be back enough to get some interceptions too. So if he can do all that plus the tackles, I mean that's Zach Bond type of production. That's Robert Spillane type of production. Top top three, top four, guys. So yeah, it's sounds good.
All right. So people were speculating that Carl Brooks would be the starter in place of Kenny Clark when he got traded, but Kobe Wooden is the name to know. I mean, you'd have to be in a really deep defensive tackle league to play or pick him up. But just in terms of educating our audience, just want to make sure if they saw Carl Brooks and the number of sacks he had in limited playing time, assume if he starts that he would do more and things along those lines. Don't make that assumption with Carl Brooks, folks. Lucas Van Ness, of course, is now backup defensive end with Michael Parsons coming in, playing across from Rashawn Gary. Marcus Davenport starting on the edge across from Aiden Hutchinson. He stayed healthy throughout the preseason, which is amazing. There's been talk that he's looking quite good. Shawn, you're laughing before I even asked the question, but are you taking a gamble on Marcus Davenport at any point?
Absolutely not. I am not. I've never had him on my team, and I never will. Even coming out of college, everybody was on him. I was off. Injuries, hype, injury, hype, injury, hype. That's all it's ever been. No production. So no, I'm
Right.
off.
So we are off Davenport, even with all the attention that Hutchinson would draw. And how many weeks before Davenport ends up injured and missing a game?
He's already made it further than we both thought. Three. I'll give him three.
Three, you give him three.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick on the Falcons, Leonard Floyd and Arnold Ebiketie are the starters. The rookies, first round draft picks, James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Walker are listed as the backups. I purposely said Pierce first because if one of those two got hurt, it'll be Pierce going in for them as a starter, not Walker. Walker has missed so much time with injury,
Yeah.
had a lot to learn on the edge as it was. But right now, it's Floyd Ebiketie, a whole situation we're staying away from. On the Saints depth chart, Carl Granderson it's Carl Granderson or Chase Young across from Cam Jordan. This kind of feels like
Veteran service.
I'm sorry, Shawn.
Just a veteran courtesy service for Cam Jordan. That's what I'm hoping
Absolutely.
for.
So, do I think Cam Jordan's out there in the first snap? Yeah. Do I think he plays a lot less snaps and maybe is in the 30% range of snap count, and Granderson and Chase Young are dominating the snap count on the outside? Yes, I do. Do you agree with that, Shawn?
Yeah, I think if anything, he's going to stay down on the line. Maybe scoots in a little bit more inside three tech or something, and you got Young and Granderson on the ends. That's the only right way to do it with his age.
Yeah, and I think if he does get more than 30%, to your point, him and Brissy are rushing on the inside on a pass rush situation while Granderson and Young are coming from the outside. Now, the one risk that we have with Granderson and Young is how much they get sent back into coverage. We saw what the Falcons did last year with Matt Judon and how that ruined him.
Yeah.
Something we're going to keep an eye on. Right now, I think they'll do more rushing with them as opposed to dropping. They will drop periodically with some of these exotic Brandon Staley kind of plays or situations. But right now, I'm still okay with both Granderson and Chase Young as defensive end threes types right now. All right. All righty, Shawn. We've made it through the depth charts and our key notes that we've picked up from an IDP perspective. We've talked about some bold takes, but we have some more bold takes. And why don't you start off by giving us another one of your bold takes that we maybe haven't touched on yet?
This was not super bold, but I do see Willie Anderson being the leader in sacks this year with about 18,
Oh,
and
wow.
earning defensive player of the year. This being, I believe, his third year. Third or fourth. I really think he blows up this year. They got the schedule for it. They're in a division that's right. With the offenses he's going against, rookies, Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, just those three teams alone. Now they'll play them twice. That's 6 games. he should be able to get half of that against those guys.
That's a very bold take indeed. I have to admit, I have Hutchinson as my number one in sacks, but I had Jared Verse as my number two in sacks. Even though he only had 4.5 last year, that was as a rookie. He had an incredible pressure rate. He had a high pass rush win rate, which is very difficult to say.
Right.
And I just think with the addition of Puna Ford, another year for Fisk, another year with Byron Young, I just love Verse, and I think Verse finishes second in sacks. So maybe it's Anderson first and Verse second, but I do
I'll
feel
take
good about Hutchinson as well.
that.
All right, bold takes for me. My next one here, from a linebacker perspective, the following linebackers will all finish in the top 30: Nate Landman, Christian Roseboom, Servasia Dennis, Peyton Wilson, and Pete Werner.
Pete Werner? I cannot tell you how many drafts I've done where he is pretty much went undrafted or right at the very end. He is that overlooked right now. People have Danny Stutzman, glazed eyes. Um, he's completely fell off the map, so he's going to outdo his ADP just by showing up.
Yeah, the scheme that Brandon Staley is going to run, I think, just plays really well into Pete Werner's wheelhouse in terms of more zone coverage. And the Saints defense is going to be on the field a lot. And Demario Davis is 36 years old,
Yeah.
and I think there's a lot of things that just play in the favor of Pete Werner to get, top 30 might be a little bit aggressive, but surely top 36. And for the price you can get him, I think it's a real steal. And I feel really good about Landman, Roseboom. I think Peyton Wilson surpasses Patrick Queen this year, and then Servasia Dennis, who I talked about earlier. All right, Shawn, your next bold take, buddy.
I think I've covered most of them. I do have one more here for the rookies. To lead all the rookies in sacks, defensive rookie of the year, James Pierce.
James Pierce.
I think he gets it done over Abdul Carter. They're both in very similar situations where they're a little buried on the depth chart. They will see some rotation in. Both of them had pretty solid metrics in the preseason as far as pass rush win rates and just pressures in general. I think James Pierce is the real deal, and it's only a matter of time before he takes over one of these guys.
And the difference of Pierce versus Carter is Carter has Burns and Thibodeau ahead of him.
Yeah.
Pierce has Leonard Floyd and Arnold Obaketi in front of him. And so if I was picking between those two, I'm with you on Pierce for this year. But
Yeah.
my rookie of the year would be Carson Schlesinger.
So my reasoning for taking Pierce over Schlesinger is it's so hard for a linebacker to win it. It's just like the defensive player of the year. You just about have to do it with either sacks or interceptions. Now, Patrick Surtain last year, was a little bit of the exception there because he only had 4, but he's looked at as such a lockdown type of guy that he shut down half the field. And a lot of the top edge rushers underproduced last year from what we were expecting. So, Pierce can get enough sacks, it'll overshadow Schlesinger unless he can get enough sacks and interceptions. But he's also going to have to get a touchdown or two to really stand out. That's asking a lot of a veteran, an elite linebacker already, let alone a rookie. So that's why I picked Pierce.
That's a great call out, Shawn. So if you have convinced me, and if I'm placing a bet, which I might have to do, I'm going to put a bet on James Pierce here for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Okay, my next bold take is who you won't see in the top 24 to top 30. Alex Singleton, TJ Edwards, Devin Lloyd, Levante David, Patrick Queen.
The Levante David would hurt me the most. Yep. I'm okay with Queen. Lloyd is just really fell off. Queen's always underproduced. Now, I will say this. If Peyton Wilson, if he is the green dot all season long and plays a full-time role and allows Patrick Queen to just go and attack, I think that bodes very well for Queen, much like his time in Baltimore next to Roquan. So if that were to happen, I could see Queen kind of jumping back up a little bit, but still, just on the Steelers and how much they've underproduced as linebackers as a whole. Uh, yeah, I could see him falling out. He was barely making the cut anyway at the top 24, 26 range.
I'm still placing my bet that Peyton Wilson plays 100% of the snaps, and that's the bet that I'm placing. That says I think he's in the top 24. And because he's in that other role, and I think they're going to let him run around more, and he'll play in pass coverage more and do a better job. I just think he'll get an interception or two as well. I think he'll blitz every once in a while. I think so. We'll see if I'm right on that one. I've been known to be every once in a while wrong, not very often.
By number one overall linebacker for IDP this year. Come finish. He's going to lead the lead in tackles. He's going to lead the fantasy community in points, probably. Jamie Sherwood.
Jamie and Sherwood. So you're not concerned about the system?
I think he's going to do enough. He's going to actually get us some bigger plays this year, not just the tackles. And yeah, he showed what he could do last year, with that full-time role, health. I'm not scared of Quincy Williams playing next to him. The system itself doesn't bother me enough.
Okay. And Sherwood is a former safety. So you would think
Right.
he should be able to grab a pick, at least one pick, if not potentially two in that system, as Alexander Zaloni has done in the past. My leader for interceptions, I talked about in a previous show, Kalen Bullock will have 7 interceptions. I doubt it down by 1, but Kalen Bullock will have 7 interceptions. And those 7 interceptions in big play scoring systems will put him into the top 24 as a safety.
My interception leader was Cameron Kitchens. I just went with somebody who I didn't expect. I think it will be a safety, much the way you went there, and with the way the Rams are running that secondary with all the safeties they have, I think he's the deep guy. We've seen him get 4 last year. Seemed a bit explosive when he had them in his hands. So if he can get 6, take 2 of them back for touchdowns, that's going to be a pretty good case. So.
Kitchens has always had a knack for getting picks, college as well as the pros last year in his limited playing time. If he gets the playing time, he might give Bullock a run for he might give Bullock a run for his money. But the key will be will Kitchens get the playing time? That will be something we'll have to watch for sure. All right, my last bold takes are all tied to the edge. If Alex Highsmith stays healthy, he'll have more fantasy points than T.J. Watt. Trevon Walker will have more fantasy points than Josh Hines-Allen.
Yeah, I'm with that one.
And Yaya Diaby will be a top 15 edge.
Oh, wow. It's a pretty good, much like Will Anderson in the AFC South. NFC South isn't much better, so the reasons already sound just based on the teams he's going against. Going against, still a young Penix, whatever the Saints are going to throw out there. And, Carolina, they looked not as the team a lot of people are hyping up through the preseason anyway. So, that's a good call.
All right, so those complete our bold takes, folks. We sprinkled some in during the show as well, and so hopefully y'all enjoyed those. And if you place some bets on these and you win, you can reach us at our X handles, as we talked about earlier in the show. We'll repeat later to give us our share. And if we lost, please don't ask us for it.
Those for listening.
A shout out to Kevin Hutchison, 2 Voids, Travis Knott, Vito Puntillo, Michael Wizoric. Sorry if I messed your name up, Michael, and Raymond Phillips, who put questions and comments into our IDP Plus show last week on the YouTube channel. And they had some comments and questions, and we had some good interface with them on the channel. Just want to shout them out and also let you know, Shawn and I are periodically checking the questions and comments that come in on the YouTube show, answering different questions and giving you thoughts about Like Ventrell Miller versus James Williams which now the clear answer is Ventrell Miller, but when we answered it, we still gave Ventrell Miller as the answer. So those types of things, reach out to us on things you heard on the show. By the way, we love your bold takes. If you have bold takes, we'll probably try and squeeze them into our next show as a side note if you put them into the YouTube comments as well. Reminder that our Start Sit show, once again, this coming Sunday morning, 11 Eastern a.m., that is, 10 a.m. Central Time for 1 hour. Get your questions in early. And by the way, oftentimes we have some good thought-provoking stuff as well. And we even talk about depth charts and other stars, things along those lines. So you can actually learn even if you don't have any questions. So come join our Start Sit show starting this Sunday morning, which we'll be doing every week throughout the season. Shawn, anything in terms of closing out the show that you wanted to let folks know?
Just one last reminder that not to overreact to whatever happens these first week or two. We're going to see studs blow up like Sammy Watkins used to. Week 1, Sammy Watkins was elite. Anything after that, he was terrible. So we're going to see some out of the ordinary players. Don't panic. Don't just get rid of a player because they underproduced this first week. So hold on and just give it time.
Take a deep breath.
Mm-hmm.
So week one, losing week 1 will not kill your whole season, folks. It's 1 week.
Right.
All right. And as we talked about during the show, there's a lot to learn during this first week in terms of playing time, rotations, full-time roles versus part-time, et cetera. So we'll be watching. We'll be helping you along the way here. Okay, so if you like this show, please give us a thumbs up on the YouTube and subscribe to the channel. If you have comments, questions, suggestions, as I said, please put them on the YouTube channel. Give me a follow at RickyRod66 and Shawn at Shawn8386 on the X. You can, of course, catch a replay of this show. And if you missed our last show in particular, it was over 2 hours, as I mentioned earlier in the show, but man, a ton of great info, some of which we did talk a little bit about today, but a lot of other details we didn't. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go check it out. With that, Shawn and I will see you again in it'll be a full week next Tuesday as we break down some of the weekly playing times and rotations and things along those lines. So on behalf of Shawn T, this is Ricky Roderick wishing you, your family, and your friends great health and happiness. Be kind to one another. We're out of here, and we will catch you next week, recapping week 1.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.